Okay, looking at all my chicken scratch from the previous videos, what I'm going to do right now is kind of prove to you, in effect, a little bit of how this is done really at an open source. I'll do it on TI-83 calculators and a number of other places as well, which I think it's really a great idea to have students align with what a lot of people are doing and get those calculators in their hands as early as possible. But before you have that in their hands, hopefully your classroom or your school is kind of partaken in the open source movement, in the fact that Google will give you a Google Apps for Education account for any K-12 school in the country. And here's the one reason why to do that. Realistically, from my 20-year engineering and 10-year teaching experiences, it is because the Google spreadsheet does a really good job of multiplying matrices together. And so what I'm going to do here is we'll keep this thing going. I'm going to go out now, and hopefully this thing will run. I'm going to go out to Google Spreadsheet right now, and I apologize if it'll take a while before this fits in. I'm going to go to Google Docs, and so I'm going out of Documents, and I'm going to go to, and I'm going to make a new, create a new spreadsheet. When should our kids be doing this? 4th grade, sorry. Realistically, should we have them rely on it? Not wholly. Are they playing on their Xboxes all the time? Or they the parents or those who don't have access to an Xbox or anything like that, I use that as an analogy. Okay, so the reality is, if you can keep your kids off of those machines, that's bully for you. I'm not making any statement about Xboxes particularly. I start this conversation with talking about kids throwing rocks at other kids, and I shouldn't say that. Maybe snowballs. So the kids are dealing in 3 dimensions from very, very early. Around 3 years old, you figured out the 3rd dimension, and you figured out the 4th dimension being time. I firmly believe it. I remember the first time a rock hit my head. I remember the kid that threw it at me. I remember the snowball. And so that is nothing but 3 dimensions and a 4th dimension being time thrown in. So that said, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go ahead now and use this and kind of mimic what I just did on that same point, which we remembered was -1 and -1 and 0, and remember the 1 scale factor, which is going to be odd. And I can actually even go to the point now of colorizing that text color, of it being, remember, red is X, green is Y, and Z is blue. Pretty standard colors. You can check out, anyone in the tech ed department will show that to you. Otherwise, have asked any kid look in his Xbox. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this E column blank here. I'm going to go ahead and fill in my unity or identity matrix like I usually do. 1, 0, 0, 0. I go back to the beginning. 0, 1, 0, 0, and then 0, 0, 1, 0, and there usually is a function to do this in most calculators anyway. 0, 0, 0, 1. And I'm going to just colorize that as one color if I can. I'll go ahead and just give it, let's see, an odd color there. So, because you kind of want students to get used to this really being kind of one number. It's hard to explain, but they're capable of it. This is a transformation. This is the transformer that does nothing to this point. This is a set of points, and eventually once they're used to the order, you then keep this as one color as well. But what I will now show you is what Google spreadsheets do better than any other spreadsheet I've ever seen, and that is a matrix multiplication. And so you remember, this is what we want to generally keep. This transforms this, and we get an answer over here. And so what we can do is we can go to there and we can go equals matrix multiply, EMMULT, and open that. You could have named this as a transform, and I'm going to leave that to you if you want to do however you're dealing with spreadsheets. I'm going to grab that whole thing. So you're multiplying that, hitting a comma. Now I'm grabbing up this whole thing, closing it up. And now you see that this transformation has given you the same output, which makes sense because this is the number 1. I will end with this because at this point students are ready to do the animation with the math. So now they have 1 point, they know where it is, and someone can sit there at the board and mark it up on -1, again 0. It won't be long before they're moving around the classroom in 3 dimensions. Because once they have the power of understanding how the multiplication works, they can realize that this vector here, and I'm going to go ahead and now change this one back to red, and this one to green, and this one there to blue. They can realize they can now start going to what they did starting in 2nd grade, which is learning to translate something. And so when they say we're going to move 10 in the X, they can hit a number here, hit a return, and if you notice there, this thing has moved 10 in the X direction. They can change this, of course, to maybe -5 in the Y direction, and that number changes. And of course, here you can even start flying. We'll go 100 high. And it's changing this transformation. You will want to have done that by hand. What you want to also understand is most people will teach that you're going to just add this to that. That's not what's going on. You go back through the multiplication, and then eventually you start dealing with the translation in this stack translation vector, and then the rotation in here. And so I'll end with that as a precursor to then how you start to deal with transformations. The next step that is completely antithetical to what standard operating procedure on those who are not keeping track of what kids are doing on gaming is to think that you cannot talk about the points on a circle essentially until junior year in high school. And so I know numbers. It's a kind of number that I would expect your students can learn very quickly. I'm going to plug in some numbers here that have to do with a description of a 45-degree turn. And your students, of course, will not learn the decimals because the decimals are odd. They can learn radicals. So I am actually putting in what is the cosine and the sine of 45 degrees, 0.7071. And I'm going to go ahead and take these back to 0. And now what you see is what happens if I rotate that point 45 degrees about the 0, 0. I now have done this transformation of a rotation. In this case, I've rotated about the z-axis, or I've rotated on the plane, though I can just as quickly take these numbers and move them around other spots and start rotating in 3 dimensions so they can keep up with their buddies in Super Mario Brothers. I'll try to get out of the crazy other games. All right, so the point of this one video here is to show you that, in fact, the best matrix multiplier out there, at least in terms of getting students tied to open source, one of the best ones besides a TI-83 calculator, which is a little bit more daunting than a spreadsheet to many, is the Google spreadsheet. Excel does it. It has some bells and whistles that makes it hard, for good reason, I think. But once you get students to understand that matrices are just a way of formatting numbers in a new place value to do things like transforming shapes, it's probably maybe a better and a easier or a funner sell to then go backwards to solving systems of equations. I picked up a book on a trip with a buddy of mine who has passed. One of my, I guess I'd call him a mentor. It's a book by Ian Stewart, and in that book they talk about matrices being this: a solution in search of a problem when matrices were discovered. A solution in search of a problem. If it is that, it is important for all of us to kind of get students using these things, besides in their Game Boys, a lot earlier than when we do have them use it, which would usually start around 7th or 8th grade. Thanks for listening. This was how to use the Google spreadsheet to do a basic matrix transformation.